You're listening to Milwaukee Mafia, your podcast dose of Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. I'm Eric.
I'm Gavin.
Gavin, we are back again.
We
Jumping
are.
into, let's see if I can remember, is it 72 or 3?
We're in 75.
See, you know what? My instinct went with 75, and I'm like, no, we're not that far in.
We're in 75, and we're going to be in 75 for a bit. I had been keeping it to 4 episodes a year. 75, I'm going to have to violate that. There's just too much going on.
Have you looked into it and figured out like how many episodes are we looking at for 75?
I don't know exactly, but it's going to probably more like 6.
Okay. So, not a significant jump. I didn't know if you were going to say like 15 episodes.
No.
Like, wow, that was a really big year.
No, not a significant jump, but I cannot keep it to 4. It would not be right.
You would just be cutting things that you're like, yeah, this needs to be in the story.
Yeah, and this one is actually going to be a double episode. So we're going to do half now and half next time.
Okay, so double episodes in 75 are becoming a thing too, because I think this might be the second one already. Was the last double episode we did in 75? Because we just
it? Maybe
we recently recorded one. So.
We did a double episode. I don't remember when it was. But yeah. So, and this is actually almost a triple episode because what the episode we're going to do after that is going to involve a lot of the same people.
Okay.
Totally different thing, not this story at all, but a lot of the same people.
And it's like months later or something like that. It's not like following right off of this story.
They're not directly related, even though it's some of the same people and it's the same year.
Okay.
So, like I said, there's a lot going on in 75. Yeah, I guess that's it. So, this is the story of the North Brook Inn. And this is a story I've been asked about many, many times when I've done speaking engagements. So it's a story that, like, I could just tell. But as I had told you off air, when I started going through the notes that I hadn't typed up yet, the FBI pages was over, like, 500 pages. There's still, like, 150 I haven't typed up yet. Of just this case.
Wow.
So there's some more out there, but I could have winged it if I had to. But anyway, so the various people involved in this story are also around the same time involved in an illegal massage parlor, prostitution, that's the one we'll do as another episode, an auto theft ring, getting confidential information from the police, and connections with the Mafia in Denver.
Wow.
So, like, they're just all over the place. But I'm going to try to keep it to North Brook Inn as best I can.
So are our characters Milwaukee Mafia members, or is this seeming to be something adjacent to the Milwaukee Mafia?
That's very debatable.
Okay.
I don't know if any of these guys is actually a Mafia member in the strictest sense, but they're definitely guys who will do work for Frank.
Okay.
Yeah. July 1974, an informant called a state agent, state officer, police officer, to warn him about a man named Jacob Schlechter, or Jack Schlechter, who was a tall Chicago criminal who'd been associating with Frank Balistrieri. He had a record of assault and burglary. He had burglarized a number of places, including an insurance office. He was also involved in a hijacking of $50,000 worth of cigarettes. Schlechter, although he was only 30 years old, apparently also wasn't really great with women because he was already on his third wife. He was known to be hanging out with not just Frank Balistrieri, but also Angelo Fazio, who we'll talk about in the prostitution story, Joseph Basile, Herbert Holland, and others. Now, as far as Joseph Basile goes, now, I don't know if his name is Basile, Basil, Basili. I'm not exactly sure how he pronounced it. I'm going to say Basile, so, if somebody wants to get on my case about it, please do. But that's That's my best guess because it could be pronounced a couple different ways.
Okay.
Around October 1st, 1974, a man named Kurt Amidzich, who is a chef, left Sally's Steakhouse to start the North Brook Inn with business partners Richard Schmitt, attorney James Dwyer, and another man named William Gillen. At the time that he left, he owed Sally Papilla at least $2,000 for a loan that she gave him. This Kurt guy apparently was pretty well known. Like when there were ads for Sally's Steakhouse, they'd be like, with Chef Kurt. He was known enough. He wasn't just like you go to a restaurant and it's some anonymous guy in the back room. This was a guy who they like celebrated when he was the chef. Mm-hmm. But he apparently had serious money issues throughout his years, and he kept having to borrow more money from Sally, which is probably not great to begin with. But then he leaves her employment to go start a new business with money still owed. The North Brook Inn opens on October 14th, 1974. Sally Papilla goes to visit his business partner, Richard Schmitt, at the North Brook Inn. She says, hey, just so you know, Kurt still owes me some money. She then tells him, quote, people have gotten hurt by not showing respect. People that operate or do things such as what you have done to me, Dick, can have problems in business. You could come out here some morning and this place could be burned down.
That doesn't sound like a threat at all.
No. And just so you know, she's not calling him a dick. His name is Richard. So about a month goes by, and Sally Papilla goes to the North Brook Inn and takes Kurt's 1973 Cadillac from the parking lot and drives off with it. She had been the co-signer on the loan for the car and decided if he wasn't going to pay her, he was going to take the car. Or she was going to take the car, so she did. On December 29th, 1974, Joseph Basile called up Jack Schlechter sometime late in the evening, and the call was answered by Schlechter's wife. Basile said, is Jack there? Which he was, and then instructed him to set the North Brook Inn on fire. Schlechter, for some reason, brought his wife along, and they went out and they started the place on fire. Schlechter then went to Basile's home to collect money for the work. Basile gave him $100 and told him that another $900 would be coming later, which I don't think Schlechter was too thrilled that he only got $100 for that. But
you lost me for a minute. Who is the person that actually set it on fire? That ordered.
So Joseph Basile, so we'll get to know him a bit more.
Okay.
We'll see why he's the guy.
Okay. So we don't know why he set it on fire at this point in time. Okay, gotcha.
Yes. Schlechter asked Basile, why did you have me set this fire? And Basile told him that he was told to find a guy to do it because Kurt had screwed over Sally Papilla and there was a personal grievance. So I don't know that Schlechter knows who Kurt Amidzich is. I don't think he does, and it doesn't really matter. Basile does know who he is, but he's not the one ordering the fire. It's Sally who orders the fire, but to kind of do similar to how the mob operates, Sally tells Basile to find a guy. Mm-hmm. So Sally doesn't know who started the fire, and the guy who started the fire doesn't have to know Sally. Mm-hmm. So it's that thing where if Sally gets called in and says, who started this fire, she could honestly say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. The owner of the North Brook Inn, the owner of the building, called his alderman to make sure that the police and fire departments were properly investigating the fire. He said that he saw footprints in the snow, and he's like, I don't think this was an accidental fire. I'm pretty sure somebody came out here and burned the place. His alderman got a hold of the assistant fire chief, and they did do an investigation, and sure enough, Turned out that it was arson. There were supposed to be 300 people celebrating New Year's Eve. They had reservations for that evening. But unfortunately, because the fire was started the day before New Year's Eve, that was not going to happen.
Sounds like they were having a thriving restaurant, though, at least.
It's, from what it sounds like, they started off really good. Mm-hmm. And that probably would have been their first really big night. And then they get nothing. On New Year's Eve, Sally Papillo runs into Kurt Amidzich at Travato's restaurant. It seems to just be coincidental that they both happen to be there. While talking to Kurt, Sally starts lighting matches on fire and dropping them into an ashtray, and then tells him, "I told you this was going to happen."
I think as we're going along here, I like Sally Papillo a lot more.
She's a character.
Yeah, she is.
In early January, Schlechter asked Basile for the rest of his money. He's like, "You said I was going to get another $900. It's been a little while now. Where's the $900? Basile deflected, and he said that, I can't. We're getting pressure from Frank Balistrieri. Balistrieri is not very happy with us about this whole thing because apparently he had some jukeboxes in the North Brook Inn. And then Basile says, "You'd probably be better off not telling people that you were involved in this in any way." So this is going to, later on, this whole situation about Frank is going to be debatable about whether any of that is even true. But at this point, the story is that Frank Balistrieri had jukeboxes in there. They didn't clear this fire with him first. And now he's pissed at whoever did it because his property was also damaged. Mm-hmm. January 6th, so this is about a week after the fire. Schlechter's wife, Phyllis, calls the police and tells the detective what her husband had done. She's just like, "Hey, just so you guys know, my husband started this fire.
He brought me with. Yeah, I don't know why.
Brought me along, so I'll tell you about that." Another day goes by. Russell Anea, who we haven't really gotten to yet. Russell Anea is another guy who is kind of deep in mob stuff. He also works for Sally Papillo. He's the brother of Joe Anea, who's regularly a bartender for Frank Balistrieri, and he's the son of Jack Anea, who was murdered in the 50s.
I was waiting for the Jack to come in there because I recognize that name.
So this might be the first episode where Russ has come up, but this will not be the last time he comes up. He approaches Schlechter at Sally's Steakhouse and asked him if he knew anything about the fire that had been set. Now, Schlechter had been told by Basile not to tell anybody he was involved in the fire, so he told Anea, "No, I don't know anything about that fire." 3 days later, Anea decided that even though he knew that Schlechter started the fire, by Schlechter denying that he did, he could trust Schlechter now. He approached him again, and this time said, "Actually, we have to follow up on what we did. Now I need you to break Kurt's wrist so he never can cook again."
Okay.
Anea told him that a man named Max would get in touch with Schlechter soon to talk about the job. Shortly thereafter, Max Adonis contacted Schlechter and told him to kidnap Kurt Amidzich and take him to a garage so that Adonis and Anea could break his wrist personally. Schlechter and Adonis then discussed the plan with another man, Herbert Holland, who was to assist in this plot. Adonis explained to Schlechter and Holland that Kurt owed Sally Papillo $5,000, which is probably more than he really owed, and then he screwed over Sally, and he wasn't going to get away with it. So at this point, so now this guy named Herbert Holland knows about it. Herbert Holland, I don't even know why he's involved. Mm-hmm. he should not be mixed up in this at all. He runs a massage parlor, which, I mean, you can already guess where that goes, but it has nothing to do with this at all. So why they involve him, I don't know. Max Adonis, I'm pretty sure, has come up in previous episodes at this point. Max has done all kinds of things. He's notorious for beating people up. At this point in time, he's also actively involved in like a chop shop operation. But he's mostly known because he's like the guy who only has one arm. Mm-hmm. So Max Adonis, is a weird guy to go out and send to beat people up because he has one arm,
but he does it successfully, huh?
He's very apparently he's really good at beating people, but that's the weird thing is like he can put a ski mask on, it's not going to make any difference. You know exactly who it is. So it's really weird that they send him out for those kind of jobs.
Now at this point, this is this last beating when they kidnap him. They
didn't do it yet.
Okay. Proceed then. Let's keep going.
Oh, what did you have?
Well, my question was going to be like, so is this being carried out on Frank's behalf, or is this again Sally bringing?
This is for Sally.
Okay, so Sally,
as far as we know, Frank has nothing to do with any of this.
Okay, I didn't, because you were talking about how he had the vending machines and might have been peeved because the vending machines got. But then you wouldn't go after Kurt; you would go after Sally.
Right.
So okay.
Interesting. Yeah. No, this is just this is the weird thing about Sally Papilla. Now, Sally Papilla was always interesting, and when I give presentations, like, I kind of explain it as like she's her own little mob boss.
Okay, and
she like, because she's not, but she hires on all these guys at a restaurant that are known criminals, and a lot of the times they're guys who like aren't currently guys that Frank is big fans of. Not that he outright hates them, but just like he doesn't have a use for them at the moment. So Sally's like, well, okay. And she's not running a criminal operation. She's running a restaurant, but she's got this, vengeance
army,
streak
basically.
in her. Yeah.
And she's got this little army to go out and do all her tasks for.
Yeah, and this is not the first time that she's had them do things for her. Like it's a really weird situation because like why they even listen to her, I don't know.
Well, I assume that she's paying them, and that's why
she's
they're
paying
doing
them.
It. But I'm also intrigued by why they would do it, because I feel like every time they do something, they could be taking a step to get Frank upset with them, which I think would be a much bigger problem than having Sally be upset with them.
Yeah, trying to understand the relationship between Sally and Frank is almost impossible, I think. Like they've liked each other, hated each other so many times, I don't even know. It's very confusing. During the next couple of weeks, Herbert Holland, Jack Schlechter, and Max Adonis tried to locate Kurt Midzich, but they couldn't find him. Now, they probably could have found him if he had a restaurant to go to, but he didn't have a restaurant to go to, so where is he? January 18th, Inea is kind of disappointed in the lack of progress, and he approaches Schlechter and, gesturing with his wrists, inquires what Schlechter was doing about Kurt. I don't know what the gesture was, but apparently this is the break your wrist gesture. Schlechter and Holland renewed their efforts to locate Kurt, but failed to do so, which Inea and Adonis were disappointed in. But then finally Adonis saw Kurt at a local restaurant, was able to get his new address, new place of employment, and wrote down his license plate number, which information he passed on to Jack Schlechter so he could get this job done right away. It's like, I know where he is now. At this point, Sally Papilla has left town. Mm-hmm. She's got a second home in Palm Springs, California. She has left. Now, conveniently, it's February, January, February. It's a good time of year to leave Milwaukee and go to Palm Springs, California. So it's not suspicious that she's going to her second home there. But it does conveniently have her nowhere near the city when this stuff's going on. While this is happening, while they're out looking for Kurt, at the same time, Max Adonis now has to plead guilty to being involved in a car theft ring from years ago. He pleads guilty, so all these other charges are dropped, and they're able to get things kicked down the road as far as sentencing goes. So Adonis is still remaining free for the time being.
Okay.
Schlechter, really wanting to find Kurt and break his wrists, buys a baseball bat. He gets himself some ski masks. He's ready to go. He's loaded up. He goes to Kurt's new place of employment, which is the Milwaukee Inn Town Room East. While he's waiting for Kurt to leave work, he's approached by a police officer because the car that he's in matches the description of a stolen car.
Which it probably is, I'm assuming.
It's actually not.
Oh, really?
It's actually not. But the detective said, this matches the description of a stolen car, and we see that you've been circling the hotel for a while, which seems a bit suspicious. Like, do you guys need help? Where are you going? Well, Schlechter decided, like, he, at this point, he couldn't kidnap Kurt and break his wrist because he's already been talking to the police, so he decides to leave. He contacts Max Adonis, and Max says, hold on, pause this for now. I'm going to go talk to the police and see if I can work this out. Because Max, in addition to all the other things that he does, has buddies on the Milwaukee Police Department.
Okay.
So he's going to go see, I don't know what he thinks he's going to do, but he's going to try to straighten something out so they can go ahead with this. A couple days later, Jack Schlechter is arrested by the Milwaukee Police Department on charges of armed robbery, assault, and threatening a life, which was not even related to any of this. This was just something that
he did outside of this, basically?
Outside of this, that he then gets picked up for. He's held in the Milwaukee County Jail. When they find him, the baseball bat, the ski masks, a skill saw are all found in the car, in addition to the slip of paper showing Kurt's address and license plate number.
Oh, God.
So they're like, what's going on here? Rosanea then visits Kurt at work and tells him, quote, you know, by sheer fate, last week you were saved. You were going to see your own blood, and they were going to break both your wrists so you would never be able to cook again. They missed you. But soon, I'm going to do it personally.
At this point, wouldn't the guy just pay the woman whatever he owes her? My God.
I don't know. I don't know. The FBI at this point starts getting involved in the investigation. Between them and the police, they've kind of figured out that they don't know all who's involved at this point, but it's a little bigger than just an arson. Mm-hmm. So the FBI is getting involved. They talk to James Dwyer, who's one of the owners of the North Brook Inn. He explains, a few of us pooled our money and we opened the North Brook Inn to get this thing going. He goes, honestly, even though we were successful, we were really bad with money. And it turns out we were probably actually losing money on every plate of food that we sold. So that wasn't great. But that's also not great information for him to share with the FBI. Because later on, one of the defenses will be, well, maybe Kurt just burned the place down himself.
Oh, because it wasn't making any money?
Be like, oh, well, they've already admitted they were losing money on the place. Maybe he just burned down his own restaurant. While he was awaiting trial for these totally unrelated charges, Jack Schlechter decides that he's going to start talking to the authorities. Now, again, his wife already turned him in for the fire, which he doesn't know that his wife did that. But now he's going to start talking to the authorities. So much so that he agrees to wear a hidden tape recorder while meeting with the other guys. On March 6th, Schlechter has the tape recorder on him, and he meets with Max Adonis, who told Schlechter that they were trying to raise money, to raise bail money to get Schlechter out, which Schlechter got himself out, but whatever. Schlechter asked Adonis if that thing with Kurt was still on. Adonis replied, "Right now, it's going to be very, very cool." Meaning, got to keep things low-key. Mm-hmm. Because he had been told by a police informant that they were all under investigation. Now, again, I don't know who he talks to at the police, but that's probably accurate information. So, when Schlechter asked whether Inea was going to come up with some money for him, because he still never got paid for the fire, Adonis replied that Inea was trying to work something out and hoping that when things calm down a bit, maybe you will make another move. Schlechter then asked if Sally got wind of all this. Adonis responded, "All she knows is that the two of us got somebody," meaning got somebody to do the fire. Mm-hmm. Adonis reassured Schlechter, however, that Sally would learn of his efforts. "You're doing it for her. When it gets done, she'll know because she's going to pay you." Mm-hmm. Adonis said that Kurt was squealing, and somehow word got back to Frank Balistrieri. Frank had sent someone to talk to Russ Inea, and Frank was apparently unhappy about this whole thing. Now, the way Max Adonis apparently, he doesn't know that he's being recorded, but he's so used to having these kinds of conversations that he talks really vague about everything. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know what he's talking about because we know what's going on. But if you just listened to the tape and didn't know what they were talking about, you would get nothing out of this tape.
Gotcha.
Like, he's just that thing, and
yeah.
Oh yeah, he talked to that guy. Mm-hmm. So, like, the guy having the conversation knows what he's talking about, but he's not dropping names or anything. That conversation, the transcript of it runs 36 pages long. Like, this is a long conversation. At one point, Max Adonis on the tape is talking about his friendship with the deputy sheriff named Henry Popowski. He's just, I don't know why he brings it up, but he starts talking about it. Yeah, my buddy, da-da-da. And he goes, "When I tried to raise bail money, I had to sell a diamond to get $2,800. He goes, "I didn't want to sell the diamond because I thought the diamond was stolen." And he's just like done all this random stuff. On March 12th, Jack Schlechter tapes a conversation with Joe Basile at Mark's Big Boy, which is a good place to hang out and have conversation. If you aren't having your criminal conversations at Mark's Big Boy, what are you even doing? That's the place. Big boy fan here. Basile says to Schlechter that he, quote, took the rap for the North Brook Inn fire when confronted by Frank Balistrieri, who wanted to know why Basile had the place burned down, and Basile didn't want to tell him. He claims that Frank Balistrieri talked to him, pointed a pistol at his knees, and again said, I had jukeboxes in there. And Basile said, "We burned the place down because we didn't like Kurt. We had a personal problem with Kurt," which is, like, not true. I mean, it is true. It is true that they didn't get along. That part is true. But that is absolutely not why they started the fire. But at this point, they're like, this Basile guy, to his credit, is smart enough not to tell Frank more than he needs to tell Frank. Mm-hmm. So he's got the guts to stand up to him and say, "Yeah, this was just me. It was a me thing. There's nobody else involved." So
I find that interesting. You said that he says that Frank held a gun to his kneecaps as he was saying this.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that does not sound like a Frank MO.
It does not.
Maybe somebody was standing next to him with a gun pointed at the guy's kneecap while he was talking to him, but I just don't see Frank himself.
And maybe that's what he means, but it does read like he's saying it was Frank. And yeah, I agree with you. Like, that's very out of character from what we know for him to be very directly involved in like a threat like that. So I don't know. But again, there's questions about whether any of this even ever happened. like his consistent story about talking to Frank, he's later going to deny that any of this ever happened. So whether he's lying to him now or lying later, I don't know. We never hear Frank's side of this, so I have no idea. Mm-hmm. A state agent and his wife went to Sally's Steakhouse just because that's what you do. Mm-hmm. They were greeted by Jimmy Gennaro, Russ and Nea, Sally Papilla, and her daughter, Candy Papilla. Candy told them, "Hey, I got a new Mercedes. Yay." Sally was drinking and being very talkative, mentioning to the agent that she had been at Travado's earlier in the day, restaurant Travado's, early in the day, where the agent's son worked as a busboy. It was mentioned that the busboy had previously worked at the North Brook Inn briefly, but his 2 paychecks had bounced. When Sally heard that the paychecks bounced, she said, "That's not surprising. That Kurt is a no-good son of a bitch." Yeah, I don't know. The state agent then bought a round of drinks for Jimmy Gennaro, Russ and Nea, and Sally. The bartender declined to even give Sally a drink, saying she had had enough for the day. Sally went on to say that Kurt claimed that her guys had threatened him with a gun, which got her called to see Frank Balestrieri, who wanted Kurt left alone. So now Sally's saying that Frank is upset about it. I'd say Sally's a little more credible, but, like, I don't know. Now the FBI comes back and starts talking to the other owners, and at this point, like, they know it's arson. I think they're getting a sense of who's involved, and they do what I think is a really weird thing. They go to one of the owners and they ask him for a list of invoices of places that they bought things from. Mm-hmm. Like, did you guys serve fish? Yes, we did. Where did you buy your fish from? And they get a bunch of invoices. And the purpose of this is so the FBI can establish that by burning down the North Brook Inn, they had interrupted interstate commerce.
Okay.
Which I get why they're doing this. I think it's weird. I think it's a real stretch of what the law was intended for. Mm. But that's what the FBI's angle is, to try to make this not just an arson case, but an actual interstate case of this would go under racketeering of them. Interrupting.
Did you say how they're coming to that conclusion that this is interstate?
So if the North Brook Inn is in Milwaukee,
okay,
and they're ordering fish from Maine, wherever,
Oh my God! Really? So like
but the North Brook Inn burns down. The business in Maine is now having their sales disrupted because they're not sending any more fish to Wisconsin. So that's interstate commerce that has been halted by this criminal action. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in that case, I mean, any business basically can get...
Well, which is exactly why I think it's dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still use this in that way because it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that there's any business that doesn't use things outside of like a 10-mile radius. That makes no sense to me.
Yep. Especially nowadays.
Right. And I put in my notes that I think this is dumb. But it's weird. And I don't remember if we've talked about this or not, but there is a prostitution case in the 80s where they get them on interstate prostitution, even though the women never cross state lines. They got them on interstate prostitution because they sent the laundry to be cleaned across state lines.
Yeah, okay, that's we're really so like the prostitutes' clothing were being cleaned over state lines.
Yeah, they'd be like sending their towels and sheets and stuff, and they're like, well, that's clearly a key part of their business. So now it's an interstate business. Like,
I mean, I can
it
see how
it held up. Like even as recently as the 1980s, the courts held that up as an interstate violation. But it sounds bizarre to me.
Yeah. That's garbage.
Yeah.
I mean,
I get it. If your argument is like you hijacked a semi that's like actively traveling, yeah, sure. But yeah, it's what business isn't doing things interstate? Like it's such a bizarre thing to try to tack on there.
And it might not be as offensive back then because there was a lot less interstate stuff going on back in the 70s as opposed to today.
Yes.
You know, so there is that aspect of it.
Yeah. I don't know. Coming to the end of March now. So this is like, the fire's back in December. We're still going through March. Schlecter's taped a conversation with Russ Inea where he asked, hey, am I going to get any money? Like, I didn't get money for the fire. I didn't get any money for trying to beat this guy. And Inea's like, well, why would we give you money for beating the guy? There wasn't any beating. And Schlechter said, well, yeah, but I still invested a lot of time in that. And Inea responded, well, you would have already had him if you wouldn't have gotten out of line. I don't know what he means. Well, stay in touch with Max, in case we can and we can get a hold of you.
Just in case we need you to do another job that we're not going to pay you for.
Yeah. So, an FBI agent visits Max Adonis at his workplace, which is a auto parts store. Adonis talked openly with the agent about his history with Sally Papilla and the other suspects in the North Brook case. He says, I know all those guys. I worked with some of them when I used to work at Sally's Steakhouse. Some of them visit me here to borrow tools from the shop, or one guy had a motorcycle he needed me to look at. When asked about the North Brook Inn, he goes, funny you should mention that. I thought that fire was pretty suspicious. He goes, but I think what probably happened is there were silent partners in it who did it themselves because they were losing money and were unhappy with the management. Now, I don't think he knows that they were losing money. I think this was like a lucky guess on his part, that he brings it up as a theory. Adonis also said that Kurt had called him up late one night and accused him of stealing Kurt's car, but Max denied knowing anything about it. And I don't think Max did steal Kurt's car. I think Sally handled that personally. I think she's the one who showed up and took the car.
Really?
Because she'll admit to it later. So I think it was just her. Then finally, on April 22nd, 1975, Sally Papilla and all these other guys were indicted and arrested for this ongoing conspiracy of arson, threats to break his wrist, and all this other fun stuff. Max Adonis is arrested at his workplace, and as he's being taken away, he advised the other two men working at the shop to call his attorney. He goes, hey guys, they're hauling me off to jail. Could you call my attorney for me? And apparently I don't know who they were, but the other guys at the shop apparently knew who they're supposed to call when Max gets arrested.
This happens at least once a week in this office.
Yeah. Sally Papilla had already heard that she had been indicted. The indictment came down, and then people go out to arrest you for it. She had caught wind of the indictment already, so she got a hold of her attorney, and her attorney went to the federal building to turn themselves in. So when they went out looking for her, they actually found her in the elevator on the way up to the office.
They're like, well, this was easy.
Russ Inea was arrested while working at Sally's Steakhouse, and they tried to get him talking, which he wouldn't. The only thing he would say to them is like, oh, you arrested Max Adonis? Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. And then after that, he wouldn't say anything. The last person who was arrested was Jimmy Gennaro. Jimmy Gennaro was arrested by the FBI as he left his residence on North Prospect. He said he wouldn't make any statement without his attorney present. His bond was set at $10,000, the same as the others, which he was able to pay. They don't pay the full $10,000. They paid a fraction of that. But spoiler alert for next episode, Jimmy Gennaro charges are going to get dropped. Because if you've been paying attention, I know this is complicated with so many people involved, but if you're paying attention, you will have noticed that Jimmy Gennaro's name did not really get mentioned at all. So
they're going to pull him into the courtroom and realize, we think you're a part of this, but we have no idea what you did because we have no evidence of you doing anything.
The thing, so this is what Jimmy Gennaro did. I'll say what he did. He is the maitre d' at Sally's Steakhouse. He's just like the host that welcomes people. And Sally, I don't even remember what her exact comment is, but something like, you better not mess with me, blah, blah, blah. Something that, it could be taken as a threat, or it could have just been taken as she was really upset when she said it, but wouldn't have actually meant anything by it. And Jimmy Gennaro was standing nearby, and he says something like, yeah, listen to Sally. So they rope him in on the conspiracy as though he knows about this ongoing threats and stuff. But,
just because he made an offhanded comment.
Yeah, but they're going to, at this point, when they're indicted, they have enough information to know what happened, but they're still going to investigate it between now and the trial. And during the investigation, they're going to figure out that, yeah, Gennaro was never, he didn't handle the money. He didn't do any of the violence. He wasn't even in the car during these conversations. It's a real stretch to loop him in. So he's arrested, but you can kind of just pretend that he's not there. So
I think it's really funny with this story. First of all, this is a pretty elaborate story.
Yeah.
And it all stems from some lady being owed $1,000. I think it started out as $1,000 and then it went down to $900 and then it jumped up to $5,000 at some point.
The exact amount is a little unclear. I think it'll get mentioned in the second part, but she knows how much that he owes on the car. That part she knows because she is the co-signer on the car. But in addition to that, apparently she also would pay his income taxes for him because he didn't know how to do his own taxes. and he would run up bar tabs around town and she'd pay off his bar tabs. So it sounds like this guy was not very responsible. And Sally respected the fact that he was a really good cook at her restaurant and kind of covered his ass for it. And then when he left, and I don't blame him. If he's as good as they say he is, then sure, why not run your own restaurant? But I totally get why Sally's not too thrilled when she's basically been carrying this guy and he's like, all right, bye. This goes way, way beyond what the appropriate response is. Sally's not wrong to try to get her money back. And Sally's not wrong to be upset. But Sally does not handle the situation appropriately.
No, she doesn't. And this is quite a bit to go through over just a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And now I guess I can see, because I can see why this Kurt might not even fully understand how much money he owes Sally. Because Kurt's probably...
I don't think he does know.
Yeah, I think Kurt is just kind of dumb and doesn't realize you're running around running up bar tabs everywhere and somebody is paying those for you.
Yeah.
Like the reason why your wrist hasn't been busted prior to this is because Sally was out there bailing you out in everything you were doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, pretty much.
Not to give Sally a pass on this by any means, because
I would not give Sally a pass on this. Is a bad look for her, but definitely say what you want about Sally, because there's a lot of things you can say about Sally, but she's apparently pretty loyal to her employees.
Yeah.
So
Well, and she knew when she had a good thing,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
she knew there were people coming to this restaurant because he was a chef. So
Yeah.
she was willing to go the extra mile for that. I think she is just an amazing character.
she is fantastic.
Yeah, because
I've joked before. Again, it's probably nothing I would ever do. It never jumps to the top of my list. But if somebody wanted to write a book of just Sally stories, you could do it.
Okay, and that was something I was curious about. Is there enough out here? Because the whole time when you first started this story, I really felt that vibe. Like when you said, to you, Sally was almost like her own little mob boss.
Yeah.
I really got that feeling from this story from the beginning.
Well, yeah. So I've thought about it, and I've thought like, well, if you were to write a book about Sally Papilla, like what I would call it would be like Sally Papilla, a mob of her own, because she always had these guys that she would have do things, and there's a lot of information because she's involved in these things. She knows all these guys. She was dating and probably married to the Chicago mobster for a while, which at this point we don't really hear much about him anymore. But she had that going for her. And as I'm pretty sure we've established in previous episodes, the state police would come in and eat at her restaurant fairly regularly, and she would have conversations with them. And again, I don't know, like, if she just doesn't realize the things that she's saying out loud, but it's more than just personal gossip. Like, she's telling them about things that they're actually looking into.
They're like, we love this lady. She knows enough and she doesn't realize what she's giving us.
Yeah, like when they're going around and they want to know all the dumb things that, like, oh, this is where Frank does, things that aren't criminal things, but just so they get a sense of his habits. Oh, yeah, she's like, oh, yeah, I saw him over here. So
that's great. And it's funny.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had mentioned before that she was married to a Chicago mobster, but that makes a lot of sense as to why she can get away with some of the stuff that because this seems like, even if her and Frank were on good terms at certain points in times, a lot of things she's doing sounds like something that would put her on Frank's, like, let's get rid of this person list. And that would explain why maybe he was hesitant to do that, just because.
It's definitely come up because she was dating a mobster named Frank Buccieri, who in the paper they call him Frankie the Horse. I don't know if anybody actually called him that, but the paper called him Frankie the Horse. And he was a Chicago mob guy. But in addition to that, his brother was a pretty high-ranking Chicago mob guy. Mm-hmm. So, yes, a good... Now, Frank Buccieri and Frank Balistrieri, as far as I can tell, were not buddies. Like, I'm sure they knew each other, but even though Buccieri was in town all the time, it doesn't seem like they ever did anything together. So, I don't know exactly what the story is there, why they did or didn't get along, but absolutely, like, that's probably the key reason. Now, the other key reason, of course, is Sally is a woman, and generally speaking, you don't beat up women. Of course, there's exceptions to that.
Yeah.
But
you could blow up her car or something like that.
you could definitely do something. Now, it's tough because she's dating the Chicago mob guy, so she's protected that way. Even though she's got her own criminal problems, she is friends with a lot of, like, law enforcement and politicians. So she's kind of protected in that way, because if something did happen to her, that you'd have everybody on your case. Like, she would be very high profile. So she's protected in a couple different ways.
And maybe even the fact that she was the owner of this steakhouse, made her kind of a face that people knew in the city. So if so if you shoot some random person, nobody cares. But if everybody's like, oh, we love that steakhouse, that becomes a much bigger deal. So
she was famous. Like, when she died, like, they wrote her up in the newspaper, and the newspaper write-up it mentions that she's involved, that she's done things and gone to federal court and all that. Like, they don't ignore that happened, but at the same time, they're like, yeah, one of the regular people who ate at a restaurant was Herb Cole. So she was friends with Herb Cole, who I assume listeners know who that is, but Herb Cole, I know him primarily as a senator, but he also was a major business owner in Milwaukee. I believe he owned the Bucks for a while.
Yes, he did.
Okay. So
I think it was the Bucks. He owned some sports team in Milwaukee. I'm pretty sure it was the Bucks.
So that's what her obituary is. It's not like, Sally, here's a list of all the laws she broke. It's like, Sally, yeah, she hung with some shady people, but look at all these other people she knew too. So she was friends with everybody.
So yeah, so she might have just been something that was out of like that's too big of a thing for Frank to deal with, that he wasn't gonna do anything to her, just because I think so. So many problems that could arise from it.
I don't know what you could or couldn't do to Sally, but like, if you took it so far as to actually kill her, you would be in some trouble.
Yeah.
That's of all the people you can kill and get away with in the mob, I don't think Sally's one of them. I think you would actually get some real trouble for that.
Yeah. So what an interesting character, what an interesting story. And I assume now, so we're going into part 2. Is part 2 just going to cover basically the case or the trial, or now are we...
Primarily. Yep. So I wanted for the first half to cover what they actually did up to the time of being arrested, and then we'll pick it up and see how things play out for them.
Okay. Cool. All right. Then we are going to wrap this episode up. We want to thank everybody for their continued support of the podcast. If you like what you hear, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Milwaukee Mafia, or you can just go to MilwaukeeMafia.com and click on one of the banners. And Gavin, where can people reach out to you at?
People can go to MilwaukeeMafia.com, or they can email directly at MilwaukeeMafia@gmail.com. I have been a little not great at answering emails lately, but I get to them. And I do thank the Patreon members. We've had a few new ones recently, so people are still signing up, and
we appreciate that. So we will be back next week with a Patreon episode, in 2 weeks with another regular Mafia episode, or the conclusion of this story. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. Join us next time for another look back at Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.